Well, good evening, happy Saturday, happy weekend, whatever you want to call it. We are back for another episode of the Unfiltered Historian with the Unfiltered Conversations. And today we have a very, very special guest, and we are very excited to introduce to you today author Lisa Samia coming to talk about her new book. So I'm not going to do a whole bunch of introductions. I'm going to definitely let her take the reins here and introduce herself because I think we're all more than capable of introducing ourselves at this point. But without further ado, we're going to start with Lisa, and then we'll just introduce you to Jay and Anthony because they're always here with us. But you know who they are by this point. But Lisa, welcome to the show. We are excited to have you.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited to be here this evening to talk about Civil War poetry. And my latest book, the third book in the Nameless and Faceless series, we're going to be discussing the Nameless and Faceless of the Civil War, Gettysburg, Manassas, and more. So I'm looking forward to talking to everyone this evening. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And, you doing Manassas and especially giving Manassas some highlight definitely hits a special place in probably everybody's heart here, guys. Manassas is a very connected place to me, and just like many others here that are with you tonight, as yourself. I mean, you got to spend quite a few months, I believe, at Manassas and really got to explore weeks.
Weeks.
Thanks, Anthony. She had a few weeks at Manassas and was able to spend it as an artist in residency, which we will dive into here in a little bit. But Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into this crazy Civil War bug addiction thing that we all share here. What happened?
Well, I spent most of my professional life, here we go, you're going to love this story, working in commercial real estate management. And I had a health issue, and about 10 years ago, and started thinking about other things to do. I always loved to write poetry, and I love the Civil War. I love our presidents, and next thing you know, I'm hooked. And very first battlefield I saw in June of 2013, after I'd finished treatment, my husband treated me to a trip to Washington, D.C. So, of course, we went to Manassas, and that was the first battlefield that I saw, and I just fell in love with it. So, and
awesome.
The poetry just was like, again, something I always loved to do, and then the idea came to me to combine my love of poetry by creating an unknown Civil War, person or soldier or anyone, and then combining it with an actual Civil War event. So we're actually combining a bit of literature with Civil War history.
Awesome. And we have some hellos from around the world tonight. We have Fernando in Venezuela saying good evening.
Oh, good evening.
Liz H says hi, everyone. Hello, Liz. I hope you're doing
Hi,
well.
Liz.
Good to see you on here. We also have Rob saying good evening, all. Great that you have Lisa Samia on this evening. Well,
hi, Rob.
So Lisa, that's one thing I did forget to mention earlier. We do have a slew of comments that might come on today. So if anyone asks questions on here, I will put them on the screen. If you can see them there, that means you can answer them.
Hey, Tyler.
Awesome. Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
Why don't you highlight the guy who's taking a break for a cuppa?
For a cuppa. Look at that. Our co-host, Darren Rawlings. Hello, sir. Good evening. Sorry, I'm not with you. I have to work, but currently on my tea break. Will you drink a giant cup of tea for us, Darren? Excuse me, coffee. Coffee. Darren's from England, so we like to give him, a little bit of crap for all that tea going.
Well, we love you, Darren, either way.
We do. We do. I'm glad he's here tonight with us and hanging out. So, Lisa, you have authored 3 books now in this series in Nameless and Faceless.
Yes.
And all of them, and I've had the pleasure of reading all 3.
Thank you.
I adore all 3. I think it's amazing. And, as a former teacher, it's really cool to see the literature combination with Civil War history. So my first question for you, if that's okay, is what really inspired you to write this series? What became of the literature and CW history mix? What brought that to you?
Well, the Nameless and Faceless of the Civil War, you should know, was actually it was a different project, and it never materialized. That's correct. Yep, right there. And that is Manassas as well. The picture of that cover is also Manassas. And I don't know. I just was thinking about in putting this together. I was working on another project, like I said, and it just didn't manifest. And I had learned so much about this one prisoner of war, and I just couldn't believe it. And it was because of what I read about the prisoner diary of Michael Dougherty of the 13th Pennsylvania Cavalry,
Mhm.
and his diary that I read online. And I absolutely could not believe what I was reading. And I will tell you what happened during that process.
Sure.
He was captured initially on October 12th, 1863. He was a Union, obviously, soldier, spent time in several Confederate prisons: Pemberton, Barracks, Libby, and Belle Island. I actually went to Belle Island this year. I couldn't believe that.
No kidding. So he got around a little bit to those.
He got
prisons.
around. I mean,
Yeah.
poor guy, right? He keeps getting nabbed, actually. And then the poor thing, he ends up going to Andersonville Prison in Andersonville, Georgia.
Mhm.
And it was there when I was reading that this whole concept took place. Because as Michael was writing about what was going on in Andersonville, which of course, as you all know, and I'm sure the audience knows, was completely egregious. It was the most unbelievable, horrific prison that and I know there were others that were bad, but this one just really seemed to be exceptionally horrible. And it's when Michael starts saying, as he's there, for almost a year, he's saying, 75 men a day are dying, 100 men a day are dying, have died. And I'm like, well, I'm reading the diary and I'm like, well, Michael, who are these people? Who are your soldiers? Who are your, and they had no names, they had no faces. And I kept thinking about that. And I know, obviously, I believe it was the summer of 1865. I believe Clara Barton with a Union soldier. His name was Lawrence Atwater. He was actually from Connecticut and a former prisoner of war in Andersonville. And he went with her, and they were actually able to identify many of the Union soldiers. So I realized that. But in the initial reaction to it was, he's just talking about groups of men that were dying with no name and no face. And I absolutely could not believe it. And that's how this was born, because, and I know a lot of you, and I know that a lot of the listeners this evening, we all love the Civil War, we love learning and sharing our knowledge, but how many of you actually have gone to these cemeteries and stood there and looked at a grave with just a number on it and it says unknown, and there's rows and rows and rows of them? Well, they were people just like us, whether it was Union, whether it was the Confederacy. They were fathers, brothers, sons, and husbands. And I just actually, couldn't believe it that we don't know who they are. So I took the concept of, if they're unknown, then they're nameless. If they're unknown, then they're faceless. And I gave these individuals a voice to tell their story of what it was like at different venues, at different events of the Civil War. And in writing the poem, I would say about 80% of them, they are unknown. Occasionally, you do know who is speaking, and I did that because, some of the people that I was writing about, some of the things that happened were so upsetting and so terrible. I wanted to kind of recount that story to the reader. But the actual essay that is with it, the actual essay with the poem, is an actual Civil War event. In other words, an unknown person, we don't know who they are, talking about an actual Civil War event. So we're combining the rhyme and narrative poetry with the Civil War event. So it's a deeper way of learning. It's just, combining, like I said, literature and Civil War history. And when I give my presentations, Tyler, and I always say, and this is to understand that the lines of North and South are blurred in this collection. And I know all of you out there are going to say, what are you saying? Of course, it's all about the North and the South. Well, I take a different slant on it, in the sense that the lines are blurred because suffering, which everyone experienced. It has no
Right, and
boundaries.
both sides had equal suffering, and it's
Correct.
not, we can't take away suffering from both sides, whether right
No,
or wrong, or whatever you may
that's
believe in.
correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that is something that is commonly shared between the two. So I think you do a great justice there by allowing that story to
Thank
be
you.
told. Yeah, one of our friends said hello, by the way, Lisa. AQ, I'm sure you know very well who I'm talking about.
Hi, Andrea. How
Yes,
are
she
you?
is here. She says, "Good evening, Lisa and Tyler and gang." So AQ says hello to everyone.
Yep.
Uh,
Thank you.
Now, Lisa, this is I love this cover here. And earlier we mentioned this is Manassas, and
Yep.
I have the pleasure of looking at this. I think it's this exact picture too, with a wonderful poem on it, which you'll get to in a little bit. But I love this cover because one of my first days in Manassas, that's one of the first things I saw walking in the building and going in, was seeing this hanging up in Manassas, and that was just, I was
Yep.
like, wow, this is a really good poem. This the picture itself, I think, captures a poem. So when you guys, if you're sticking around and watching later, make sure you check out Lisa's reading today, because it's going to be awesome, and I'm really looking forward to hearing that. And again, I see this picture every day,
Yep.
so to hear the poem behind it read from you, which I've never heard you read a poem before, so I'm really excited for
Oh,
that.
yeah. Thank
But yeah,
you.
this will be cool. But yeah, this is a great cover. I think I really, really, really like the story that you've got behind starting the Nameless and Faceless. And this was your first publication when it comes to the Nameless and Faceless, right?
Yep, this is the first one. As far as the books are, as far as the poetry books are concerned, and then of course that the next one that came, we can kind of talk about that. We can talk
Sure.
about all of it. Is that's correct? The Nameless and Faceless Women of the Civil War. And there's a very, very interesting story behind this person on the cover.
Okay.
The person on the cover of this book is my husband's relative.
No kidding.
Her name is Elvira Finch Moore. And I actually have I don't think it's like a lithograph of her in a beautiful frame.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born in upstate New York, Otsego County, New York. Her father was a judge. In 1852, she moved from New York, upstate New York, to Fairfax County, Virginia. In 1853, she married a man named John L. Moore. The Moores were one of the first families of Virginia, very well off, very well situated. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And so she married him in 1853. And of course, in 1853, there's no North and South, right? So, here comes the Civil War. And there were, when my mother, it was my mother-in-law that gave me the photograph, the picture of her actually in the frame. And when she gave it to me, she turned it over, like the back of the picture, the back of the frame.
Right.
Was a secret pocket. And it was filled with guards and pickets passes that were laminated and preserved.
No way.
Yes, I have quite a few of them.
Oh,
that's
my
cool.
gosh.
Unbelievable. Now, the thing is, my mother-in-law gave her to me, and she says, Lisa, she said, my aunt, this is how she related, her aunt always told her that Elvira here, that you're seeing here, was a traitor.
Mm.
And so that got me thinking, well, traitor to who? The North or South? She's from New York. And that's what the mystery was. We don't know to what she was doing. Now, the guards and pickets passes, and I'm sure you've seen them, it has her name on it, Mrs. Moore, and it's where is she going, or where is she from, Fairfax County or Vienna? I mean, all in that little pocket in Northern Virginia.
Sure.
Going to Washington, D.C., what is she going there for? Supplies. Well, what supplies? Who was she friendly with?
Right.
And the interesting thing was her husband, but New Yorkers are never traitors.
Is that Liz? It is Liz. Of course it is.
That's what I'm not going that route, But yeah, it was so interesting because I'm like, and there were tons of them in this pocket, and I was like, so there's actually family letters dating in 1853. The time she got married into the Civil War. And one of the letters was to her sister in upstate New York, Elvira's sister, Margaret, in upstate New York. And it was about her wedding day. And inside the envelope was a piece of her wedding veil.
Oh, my gosh.
This is unbelievable. This story just kept
So you're uncovering all of this, too. Like, has the family known that all those, passes and tickets were inside of
I
that
think
picture?
my mother-in-law knew, but she never knew. in other words, when this was passed down to her, she saw what it was and just like, okay, well, my aunt left it there. So I'm not, that was what my aunt did. So I'm not touching it. So when it was actually hanging on a wall, when she took it off the wall and she showed me, and she said, well, maybe you can figure it out. And the truth is, like, I still haven't been able to, because I did uncover that her husband, John, had what he calls servants during that. So I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So that was very difficult to fathom, but it was, again, what that was like living, at that time, unfortunately, all of that.
Right.
So, but I still have no idea. I have looked and looked, and if you look at this picture, and I just want you to focus. Now, we know that people, when they had their photo taken in this time frame, they never smiled. They never thought of them to smile.
Right.
So it's common that her lips would be in a straight line. But to me, it almost has a Mona Lisa effect. I know I'm going off a little bit, but
no, that's cool.
Because she's not telling you, nor is she ever, to me, ever going to reveal her lips are sealed. Even
she's got secrets.
Yeah, she's got secrets,
right.
And I still can't find them. And you know what? Maybe some are just not. Sometimes you just have to say, okay.
She's not telling us something, and it seems like you're trying to get to the bottom of it, which is really cool, because that can be very difficult. But you have avenues of approach here. I mean, you have some of the primary sources that historians just absolutely love, and I mean, when you have those picket passes, and
oh my God, when I saw it, I went crazy. Oh, and another thing about Elvira, which I bring up when I do presentations just on this particular book, is that this freaked me out. There was a painting done by my mother-in-law's aunt's husband, which was her uncle. Okay, and this was in 1942. He did this painting of this dilapidated-looking building, and I'm like, well, what is that?
Right.
And she gave that to us too, and I'm like, what is it? And it had on the bottom of it Bailey's Crossroads.
Oh.
And I'm like, what is this? Turns out Elvira's son, Miller John Moore, her son, don't freak out, guys, purchased Bailey's Crossroads in 1897.
What?
Nice. To use as a summer residence.
Oh my gosh. And if you're a Civil War fanatic or a buff, whatever you want to call yourself, you know what Bailey's Crossroads is.
Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead, Tyler? Be my guest.
Well, I know a little bit about Bailey. I know
I know a lot about Bailey's Crossroads.
Oh, you know a lot? Okay, then if you know more than I do, please.
Well, you know the story about the Battlefield of the Republic, right?
I do. Yep. That's from Bailey's Crossroads.
That's the huge.
Yeah, they're the Grand Review in front of Irvin McDowell.
Yep. No, George
happens
McClellan.
right there at no, it's McDowell. It's Fort Upton. No, it's McDowell. It's not McClellan.
Folks in the chat, figure out which Irishman you think it was, but I'm pretty sure it was.
I don't think it was.
It's McDowell, because McClellan is not up in the valley yet, or up in the Maryland yet.
It's not
because Second Manassas hasn't happened yet.
So it's not the smiling guy.
So.
No, that was November. Bailey's Crossroads Review was November 1861. Is that right?
Yes.
61 or early 62.
Yeah, it was.
Where's McClellan?
Yeah. Oh.
Not according to Rufus Dawes.
Does Rufus Dawes say something different?
Yes, Rufus Dawes is the one who mentions the Battle of the Republic.
This is why we all study history, because this is where it gets fun. And by the way, for those watching at home, no one's mad at each other either. For those at home, just a disclaimer: we're having fun debating here.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't know, but I did research it a good bit when I was at.
Hold on, Anthony just sent me a link. I'll go to it. The origin of the Grand Review of the Army of the Potomac at Bailey's Crossroads, Virginia, on 20 November 1861 began on the plains of Manassas, Virginia, with the defeat of the hasty retreat of the Union forces. The Green Union Army under Irvin McDowell was turned into a rabble seeking safety. Okay, this is a long article. Hold on.
Keep going.
As McClellan later stated in his memoirs, the situation was truly a desperate one. All was chaos, and the streets,
skip ahead a few paragraphs.
Barrooms. Let's see. The defeated army of McDowell could not properly be called an army. It was only keep going. The rest of the newly forming Army of the Potomac consisted of raw regiments raised by the northern states and sent to Washington. These green troops, along with the defeated regiments that had re-enlisted for the duration of the war, were first brigaded together by McClellan.
McDowell planned it. McClellan reviewed them.
To this end, McClellan established an army with 12 brigades on 4 August 1861. McClellan began the reorganization.
Yep.
Okay, so it is.
You
McClellan.
still haven't mentioned the 6th Wisconsin, though, because they were encamped in Arlington. They marched from Arlington to Bailey's Crossroads, did a review, and got into a skirmish, and then marched back from Bailey's Crossroads. And they were the unit in front of Julia Ward Howe.
Man, Anthony's sending me link after link.
According to Dawes.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know what the timeline was. It's been like 2 years since I looked at it.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they were not. They were
70,000
not mustered in until
70,000 men.
1962.
70,000 men in 100
Yes, but
regiments
it's not
of
the
infantry.
grand review, Anthony. It's the review at Fort Upton at Bailey's Crossroads. It's not the grand review. I'm pretty
Check out
sure.
the link I sent, and you will see. Anyway, moving on. Let's go back
All
to
right.
Lisa.
Anyway, so sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, yes, that was the poem Julia Ward Howe wrote that became the anthem of the North, and it just, and you're gonna love this. And so there's a painting of this home that was given to in the early 1920s and 30s. That home was passed on to two of Miller John's daughters. And so they owned it in the early 40s. And unfortunately, it went into disrepair and it burned to the ground. So, yeah, I was so, but anyway, again, in the back of that painting is another pocket.
No kidding.
And it had all this, this newspapers about about Bailey's Crossroads, at the time of the review, and so I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, every time she gave us a painting, I was looking in the back to see if there was any more pockets.
There's got to be more somewhere hiding,
Oh,
I know. If you're finding all these like that.
I'm finding all these, and I did check the muster rolls, and John was, just to satisfy myself, of course, he did not enlist in the Union nor in the Confederacy. I knew it wasn't Union, but I checked anyway, just in case, and because you never know. Again, there was such a mystery behind her. And his two brothers, he was one, I think, of 9 kids. He was the oldest, and 2 of his brothers fought for the Confederacy, and one of them died. And I haven't gotten that far yet, to see. So
we've chatted briefly too about. I mean, it's kind of a side tangent here, but I got to talk about it because we're going to talk about the 121st for 1 second. When I met Lisa over the summer in person, we were chatting a bit, and I had brought up, since we were talking about Upton's Hill too. Of course, my brain's going to Upton. She mentioned something about the 121st, and I'm like, wait a minute. That's my favorite regiment in the world because one of my favorite figures from the Civil War is Emory Upton.
Emory Upton.
That's right. And he has a lot to do with the 121st. So to hear that was really cool. And you have an ancestor, by the way, who is in a book I just read multiple times, Clinton Beckwith. Clinton Beckwith was an anonymous author in one of the newspapers out of Otsego County, New York. And he ends up mentioning multiple times your ancestor. I meant to send you that recently. In the back of the book, there is, of course, the indexes that we all know so well, and that name is in there quite a bit. So
Erastus Weaver, really?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Okay, just so you guys, everybody, understands who Erastus C. Weaver was. Erastus C. Weaver, you heard me mention Elvira's sister Margaret. Margaret was married in upstate New York to a man named Erastus C. Weaver. He enlisted in the 121st New York Infantry, and we were bound and determined. We found out that the 121st New York was on the Battle of Gettysburg. We found the monument at the base of Little Round Top, and his unit was held in reserve because they got there later in the afternoon, but his unit was held in reserve on the evening of July 2nd, 1863. It was unbelievable. So do you see what I'm saying? As like so many families, what they went through. You have your North and you have the South, and they're fighting each other. This is family members. So, I mean, in our own family, on my husband's side, they were Confederacy, and they were Union. And the interesting thing about all of that is I did find out that after the war, Erastus and Margaret moved to Washington, D.C., and he became a lawyer.
No kidding.
After the war. And, Millard, her son, Millard John Moore, I'm not sure what he did, but I believe he was well-heeled and well-educated just by virtue of the fact that he could afford to buy Bailey's Crossroads for a summer, a summer residence, right?
Right.
And there were several White House invitations to cotillions to him and his wife, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So he was very well connected. But also his sister, which would have been Elvira's daughter, her name was Lillian, and she married a man. Yep, Lillian. She married a man named Charles Abbott. Mm-hmm. Charles Abbott was, I believe, a little bit older than she was, and was one of the first directors of the Smithsonian. Mm-hmm. And also, he's credited with being one of the first inventors of solar energy.
No kidding.
This is all from this. I mean, all I did was take her off the wall and look behind, right?
And then this led down that rabbit hole.
The rabbit hole is still sliding, Tyler.
That's what I like to hear.
And yeah, she is, like I said, and she's in a frame, and she's on a dresser, and every morning she's in my sight line. So she's almost like the first thing I see when I wake up. And those lips, they don't move. They just stay sealed. She's not telling me.
So our friend Walt actually brings in a great point. He mentions that the mention of Julia Ward Howe brings up an interesting point. Women have a role in translating the experiences of the war to the larger population. Songs, writings, nurses, memoirs, sanitation commissions, all ways that civilians are going to be hearing about the war from women. In a lot of these stories, though, the focal points, these portrayed as suffering, are men. Excited to hear Lisa's research on how the war impacted everyday women who may not have gotten to have their widely heard voice.
Can we get a poem read here?
Lisa, do you want to read a poem from? Hey, why don't you read us one from this one?
Yeah, I will. I'm going to read you. Okay, hold on. All right.
Because I want to get into the Manassas one towards the end when we talk about Manassas. But this book right here, The Nameless and Faceless Women of the Civil War, I think we're on a good topic right now, talking about women in the Civil War. If you have one that you want to share that really focuses on women in the Civil War.
I have something that I'm going to now. I presented Nameless and Faceless Women of the Civil War to, it was very exciting for me, guys. I was at the American Civil War Museum in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. And, yeah. Someone said, ooh, yeah. And yeah, that's what I said, ooh. They invited me for Civil War Day.
Okay.
And I did a presentation on Nameless and Faceless Women of the Civil War. And there's a poem that I read, and I'm going to read this particular one because I was there on April 1st. And on April 2nd, 1863, something terrible happened in the city of Richmond.
Are we talking Tredegar?
We're talking bread or blood.
Oh, okay.
We want to talk about the everyday women who didn't have a voice. So we're going to hear from an unknown woman who was present on April 2nd, 1863. This was during the bread riots when the women of Richmond rose up because they were starving and their children were starving. The Union blockade was working, and a lot of the food was obviously going, whatever they had, to the soldiers. Mm-hmm. So the women of the city were becoming desperate.
Well, I'm excited
to hear it. I thought about those poor women, and here's someone who's unknown, and now she's going to tell us her story. Bread or blood, April 2nd, 1863. Something very grievous has just happened, I must declare. A bread riot it was of such despair. The starving women of Richmond with their babes to feed, desperate for food, I just grieved, and watched as the mob gathered and cried, "'Tis food we need, our babes may die. We cannot afford the cost of such wares, the northern blockade, we just want our share. Yet what little there is has gone to our men, left us with nothing again and again. So that today we decided to march and bring our desperation. Oh, it was maddening. Our arms full of bread and flour and meat stopped as Jeff Davis heard our grief and listened with kindness of our plight, asked her to disperse without a fight. And so then the mob did fall away, if you must know, but not without food for their babes in tow. And as I held on to my bread so steadfast, for my baby, he may not last. The Civil War for the starving of Richmond, you see, has driven us mad. I am on bended knee. And so, Jefferson Davis, he threw some money at them to try to get them to disperse, and they wouldn't, and they had smashed the windows. Flour was astronomical. I mean, they couldn't afford anything, and so he just gave them money to leave, and then finally he said, "Well, if you don't, there were some guards there. You're going to get shot." And horrible. And so they just left with whatever they could grab because their families were starving. And so the interesting thing was the next day was April 2nd, right? And that was almost 160 years to the day of that riot in Richmond, Virginia. And there I was in Richmond. It was very heartbreaking. To stand there and to think about that, obviously. And I just, in thinking of this particular book, in researching for this particular one, I read a lot of diaries. That's where I get a lot of the information, because we can't always, and I know we're supposed to, generals and flanking maneuvers, who won this battle, who had how many men, who was late to the battle. That's all essential information, right?
Right.
But it doesn't tell the whole story. It's this happened and that happened and this happened. It's cut and dry and cut and dry. But these voices add another dimension, another layer underneath to all this. We're talking about the people. And the many who died, again, without a name, without a face, and in some instances without a trace. And I say that because we know about the red mist, right? The red mist. When I think about the red mist, then we know there wasn't a trace of anybody left. So that was a poem that I was thinking about, and I did that on purpose because I knew that the next day was 160 years and I was in Richmond, and I thought that was just so humbling for me.
Right. So it was an appropriate time for you. Absolutely.
It totally was. And if you like, I can give you an example from one. Let's see. Let's see. One is called Rooney's Wife. Does anybody here know who Rooney is?
Talking about Rooney Lee?
Yes, I am.
Rooney.
That's right.
Yep.
There you go, Josh.
I figured you did. But does anybody know who Charlotte Wickham Lee was? I didn't when I started researching.
Can't say that I do either. No.
Well, this is this poor woman. She died. I believe she may have been just 22 years old. And she had 2 pregnancies, and both of her babies died. And she was ill after her second pregnancy. And, Rooney was Robert E. Lee's second son. And, it was just so heartbreaking because I never knew who she was. And because it was so heartbreaking, I wrote a poem, only it's in her voice. And it's her story, her very, very brief story, which I would like to share with you, because not only did the soldiers die, not only did, obviously, the enslaved people. I mean, it's just horrible. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So we have all these masses of people suffering and dying. And there was actually something that I realized did happen, that many people did die of a broken heart. That is something that did happen. That in some instances, when I'm reading Civil War, letters and diaries of women, And they're talking about, someone they knew, a neighbor. They didn't give a name, they didn't give a face, saying that they had this woman and her husband had just got married. She was giving birth to the child. She was giving birth to the child. They came in and unfortunately told her that her husband had been killed in, he was a Confederate soldier, the Battle of Seven Pines, had been killed in the war, and she gave birth to the child. She turned her face to the wall. She died, and the baby died. So all three of them were buried together. Now, this is an actual statement from a Civil War diary, but she does not name the woman's name, the husband's name, or anything, only that it happened during the Battle of Seven Pines. So in this particular instance, this woman died of a broken heart. And so did Rooney's wife. So if I may, let me read this. I know we want to get kind of moving a little bit.
No, sure, go ahead.
It's interesting. This is, remember early on, I did say I give a voice to some individuals because their circumstances was so egregious and sad. So this is the case of Charlotte Wickham Lee. The name of the poem is called Rooney's Wife. This is again from the Nameless and Faceless Woman of the Civil War. I am not so famous as my husband, you see. History has faded me from sight, but that will not stop me to tell you my story of heartbreak, loss, and plight. I came to the family of R.E. Lee was the name, and fell in love with the second son. 'Tis William Henry Fitzhugh Lee, my life, my joy, my everything. God's will, you see, was done. My name, I shall tell you, is Charlotte Wickham Lee. Of my short life, I will now tell. Newlyweds in the Civil War, of such things that did dispel. From the first of our marriage, I worried my heart of marches and battles and so, and deaths by scores with no end. My life, my husband, please know. On a hot July day in 1862, I buried our child, you see. Our beautiful boy was taken from earth. Oh God, help me, please. And yet I continued on, expecting another babe. My heart became broken beyond compare. As soon she was to follow beside her brother, a sweet little girl, beautiful and fair. Of these losses that cut my heart and took the light from my eyes, there was yet another agony from which I could not arise. They told me you were captured by the North, and so was offered your brother in your stead, for you to come and be by my side, but it was refused, and my heart again bled. There are such times in life, of this I tell you now. There is such a thing as death from a broken heart. It took me of this, I avow.
Oh, your poems are powerful.
Really good.
It was.
Thank you. That's That's Charlotte Wickham Lee, 1841 to 1863, and that was it.
I got a question because I want to go into Charlotte Wickham Lee a little bit because Rooney owned White House Landing.
Yes.
Because he was given that through Custis's will, George Washington Parke Custis's will.
Mm-hmm.
She died in 1963, and he was captured, right?
Yes.
He was a prisoner at the time.
Yes. And I believe, go ahead, I'm sorry. Well, I believe that they offered his brother to take his place so that Rooney could come home and be with his wife who was dying. And they refused.
Yeah. That's an interesting story.
That's an awful story. Yeah. Yeah. And
it just brought back memories of where I worked because I was like, oh yeah, I really forgot about that story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, but these were some of the things that I found out. I did not know anything about her, and that's what makes this so great. Is that we're kind of learning as we're going along, and and I just really love that. And I found a very interesting source for a lot of my research. I did get a couple of poems. There was a Civil War diarist. Her name was Cornelia Peake MacDonald. Oh my goodness gracious. And she wrote a diary with the reminiscence of the war and refugee life in the Shenandoah Valley, 1860 to 1865. And I read her book, and she described obviously being in Winchester. The Union came in, took her house. She had 9 kids. It was just a horrible, horrible story. And it made me, what happened to her again. And then she ended up being a refugee, moving to Lexington. But it was this one paragraph in her book that just really completely broke my heart. She described that her little baby daughter was dying, and she just didn't realize the child was dying, and then she just dies in her arms. It was unbelievable. And all of this while this is going on, and she had to go and bury her. So, and again, this is that broken heart that I'm telling you about. I mean, I'm sure there's actually no medical name for it, but if you delve into the letters, if you delve into the diaries, it's there.
Right.
It's absolutely there, and it is and it's hard to read, guys. It's very hard to read. Reading about Michael Dougherty's experiences in Andersonville, I'm like, why do I want to read this? It was so heartbreaking and so sorrowful, and you just want to jump through those pages and help these men. I mean, that's how intense it is. That's how I feel it when I'm, and but you have to push through it, because for us to understand what was going on at that time frame. We're looking at it through 2023 eyes, but these instances and agonies were 1861, 1865, and then some afterwards, obviously. And you can't put our feelings and our processes into what was going on back then. To read into it and change it, as it were. But it's very difficult to read this stuff. But in forcing yourself to do so, I will tell you, you just add another dimension to your history credentials, because this peels away at your heart. It just does.
Sure, it does. And we had two comments. I missed AQs a minute ago. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry. Go ahead.
You just put my entire day today into words, and I thank you for that.
Well,
we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a debrief afterwards for just us, so we'll talk about that for sure.
Oh, okay.
AQ said something good earlier, and I wanted to highlight that, and that was about 20 minutes ago, I think.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. I'm trying to keep up with the comments here as well.
Yeah.
It's not your fault at all. You're doing a phenomenal job, and I'm loving what you're producing for us here. AQ says an interesting factoid. Frank and Arabella Barlow, Anthony, stayed with Julia Ward Howe for a period of time while he was recovering from his cancer.
Wow.
There you go,
I
Anthony.
didn't know that. Did not know that.
Liz also chimed in with the Anthony and Josh or Jay big.
Oh.
Well, we're both right.
We're both
Yeah.
There's been a lookup. I've been watching that happen. Let's visit that for 1 second.
So that sign is partially wrong, but also correct. So according to Dawes and the other research that I just looked up, McClellan and McDowell was under McClellan as a division commander.
Mm-hmm.
So they would both attend the Bailey's Crossroad reviews.
Yes.
And Dawes says he got so freaking tired of it because he was like, I don't know who we're doing it for now, some type of cabinet secretary or something. I don't know. It's kind of funny because he just complains about it. And then he mentions, that lady visitor that was behind us went and wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Isn't that
so it's kind of confusing because McClellan organized it, but McDowell did a lot of reviews himself.
Interesting. Yeah, Liz's comment was good too. And then we have Walt over here saying, "Great point."
Whoa!
What?
Walt coming in with a heavy comment there.
That makes two lose. That means that two losing Irishmen were present at the review.
That's why I laughed earlier. If you heard it, because he sent it to us.
He said two losing Irishmen. Yeah, I saw that.
two losing Irishmen.
One of them I have a picture of smiling very prominently, but I'm going to spare
Put it
you.
up. Put up on the screen.
All right.
Put him up there.
If you put him up. There he is.
And Tyler, I think you can change a couple of the pictures if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to say we need to start moving. Let's talk about some of them before we get to our final book. I want to talk about the one in Gettysburg.
Wait, can you get
shown yet.
Oh, go ahead.
Before I do that, I want to just dive into Walt's comment because I think Walt touched on something, Lisa, that you were really trying to convey here. He says it's a great point. It can be difficult as an interpreter to shock the audience out of complacency and into seeing the human impact of individual people's lives and deaths.
Yeah.
And he hit a nail on the head with that one.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because, and I echo that immensely because I've had times where, as historians, we read so much, we study so much, and we get so, divulged into this art or history, art sources, whatever it might be. But sometimes we do forget that human impact. Sometimes we forget that these are individual lives and individual deaths. So I think Walt brings a good point of what you're trying to do here. You're succeeding too. I shouldn't just say trying. You're bringing a new breath of life into the people that sometimes can get glossed over. And it's a really hard task to sit down and try to really convey the impact with a lot of things because the Civil War is, I don't want to say so far removed from our timeline now. We're in 2023 and we're talking 1861. So the black and white pictures and the year number might throw many folks off. It very well might. And then there's a loss of sympathy, I think, there because of the time difference we have from now to 63, 62, 61, so on and so forth. But doing things like you're doing, when you're bringing this new breath of life into the soldiers, into the people, the civilians, the women, that's important because we sometimes forget that. And they also should not be forgotten because they also lived through the Civil War. The men that were on the battlefield are not the only people living this war.
That's right.
People at home are living it too. The women are living it. The enslaved are living it. So to give them a voice, I think that's incredible. So I'm really happy there's someone like you doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I just felt so completely compelled after reading Michael's diary. That opened up that I go to him, and it was because of him and what I read and forcing myself to read it that this was born. That, thinking of that line that he said, 75 men died today. Over 100 men are dying a day. He's writing. Right. I'm like, who are they? Who, Michael? Who? And it's almost like I wanted, like I said, to dive in between those pages and see with my own eyes what was going on. That's how intensely I took his work. And in order for me, when I'm writing this work, in order for me to be completely immersed in it, I have to be willing to take on that empathy. Empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy is, you hear something, I feel bad. We all say that, which is fine. But empathy is taking it a step deeper, where you're willing to stand in that person's shoes and feel what they're feeling. So in order for me to write this, I'm the one that's going, through history, through the battlefields, and standing there and looking around and taking on the persona of an unknown person.
Sure. So let's talk about this for a minute, because I think this is really important. We saw this picture, but I want to talk about this one because it's building this story, and what you have with this is incredible. So artist in residency, we talked about the few weeks. I messed up and said a few months, but the few weeks. Talk about the artist in residency, because you were here in Manassas for quite some time, and you got to spend. Yeah, let's talk about that.
I will tell you, other than my wedding day, this was one of the greatest experiences I had in my life. You're going to say, what? From someone like myself, and you heard what I said, I worked in professional commercial real estate, right? Management, not buying and selling. Then had the health issue and just did a 180. Okay, right. So for someone like me to get into the game at a 180 at their life was just, like I said, I threw this out there. I had no idea. And I had won Gettysburg the year before. And unfortunately, I was not able to attend because of COVID. And if you want to know what that was like, I cried for a month when I couldn't go. But you never know. Hopefully, they'll reconstitute the program there. But that didn't stop me from going there and becoming inspired. But I kept applying to Manassas, and I got in. And so that was fall of 2021.
Okay.
And it was, for me, the most incredible experience. I absolutely loved it. Every day I woke up and I pinched myself in the arm And I
Anthony's
looked
clapping.
out,
I love that. Absolutely.
I thank you. I looked out the window and I said, I really don't believe I am here. Every single day, and every single day, I walked out of the house, where the residents were staying, and I would walk the battlefields. The Second Manassas, with the rock fight with Jackson. I would go down that way. I would go the unfinished railroad. I would go, do the Bull Run Trail, spend time on the Stone Bridge, walk by the Bull Run Creek. And I just could not believe, of course, I say every day, unless it was pouring rain, then it was a bit much,
Like today?
I was there 3.5 weeks, almost a month, and every day was a blessing. And to be able, I presented twice. Once was in front of the Stone House. That was me holding the picture of the book. That was in front of the Stone House.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one, that one I presented there. And then 10 days later, I wrote a bunch more poems and I presented at the Henry Hill House. I stood on the front porch there.
See if I can get that picture up for us.
Yeah, that was the one with me in the vest, in the fur vest or something. Okay. Yeah, I think it's in there somewhere. So
yeah, it is here. I just got to get to it.
Yeah, and that was my second and final presentation. So I was very, very excited to have that opportunity. It is something that has stayed with me. And Manassas, it was the first battlefield I saw. And to think that less than 10 years later, having gone through a health crisis, not only am I visiting there, but I get to live on the battlefield. This was like the ultimate dream. Like what is your, the best wish of your life? I wish I could do this. And you're actually there. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And I continue to apply to different residencies, but they all have to be sort of obviously with Civil War themes, because the National Park Service has others. But my work with that's it. Yep, that's the front. That was the front. My work doesn't translate into other areas of the country. It's not Civil War. So right. I'm a little limited, but I don't care. I'm going to keep applying and even apply to Manassas again and see what happens. But it was, and I urge anyone who's listening, oh God, that Stone House. Oh my goodness. I want to let you know that if you look at this picture and you look to the right, those two bottom windows on the right side, I was invited to the 160th of Second Manassas.
Okay.
And, I was invited to present my poetry, and it was inside the Stone House. So not only was I there as returning guest, but in the Stone House.
It's such a beautiful home too, or tavern, home, house. You name it.
And with the two names, inscribed on the upstairs. And
Anthony, what are the names?
Eugene Gear and Charles Brame.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Yes. Yep. Love it. Love it.
That's right. They're right. There are two names carved into the floor on the second level of that home. So if you find yourself in Manassas and the Stone House is open, it is 100% worth the trip into that home.
I think you guys are speaking to a very important aspect of historic sites in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. It's that power of place.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't have these moments unless you're actually there.
That's right.
You can read about this all you want, but until you're actually there, hearing from Lisa here, or Anthony, or Tyler, or me, or somebody who knows about that site, and they make it alive for you, you're not going to really have that moment.
No.
You might even have it by yourself. I've had tons of those.
Absolutely.
Where you're just standing there and you're just having this out-of-body experience, really, where you're just like, this place is horrific.
Yep.
But it's an amazing story.
And you're touching on something very cool. I mean, you're right. Place, site, location is extremely important to understanding the story and getting that feeling and that powerful feeling you get from these battlefields. But even with that, like, if you can get yourself surrounded by folks that really think about these battlefields or think about the history or know about it so much and will have the ability to conversate and go in depth with you. Like Anthony and Jay and I, we talk a lot on the phone. And there are times just in conversations that we have. Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, it don't matter.
Yeah, at this point. We all go through these moments where we'll have a conversation. It could be about something completely random, but the minute history gets thrown in, when the three of us talk, there's something powerful out of every single conversation.
Yep.
And that's with any history. And Lisa, you too. Like when we talk, there's always something incredibly powerful.
Oh, I know. We start going off on.
I know. I love it.
So much fun.
But Josh is so right. There is something about the place and the people. I think both are intertwined in a way. Because when you have that opportunity to meet with these people and meet with these places, just something about history really comes to life. And
I can't say exactly, any details of it today. I'll give a little bit of a detail. I met with a family member that's connected to this site.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard the story of their family member. And you're sitting there and you're like, wow. It just dawns on you. You're like, what? Oh my God. This place is important.
Yes.
And Lisa, you said something about the cemeteries.
Oh.
Arlington.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you're going to DC, go to Arlington.
Yep.
And don't go to the tourist attractions. If you've never been to the Unknown Soldier, go. It's important. But walk out into the middle of those rows and just look around.
Do a 360.
Every single marker is a hero of some type in a different way.
That's right.
You got the Confederate cemetery. I got my opinion on Confederates, but we're all tied together in horrific experiences.
Yeah. No, it totally is. And what you're seeing here, this is Groveton, I believe, right, guys?
It is indeed. Yes, it is.
And there were many stones represented First and Second Manassas here, and the number of unknown. Now I'm going to just ask Anthony, maybe, if you don't mind. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going to try this. Are there approximately 500 unknowns there or less?
At least 500. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What?
Did you say 500 in that cemetery?
Hold on. This is the one site in Manassas I have not been to yet. Hold on a minute.
That's a lot.
There's pieces of between 500 and 800 people.
Oh, so it's like Fredericksburg.
Right.
2 of them have a stone.
2 of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Why have I not been here yet?
It's on the busy road. It's on the right side.
So I know I pass it every day, and so there needs to be a stop this week.
Oh yeah, Groveton, and actually I wrote a poem about Groveton.
Would you like to read that poem while this picture is showing on the screen?
Let me see. I just gotta find it. I'm so embarrassed. I think you could ask me.
No,
I
found it.
Oh, wait, no,
don't be embarrassed.
No.
I was laughing at the don't be. I'm like, don't you be embarrassed. No. Oh, this isn't the podcast to be embarrassed on. Don't worry about that.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
Yes. Oh, and actually, oh my gosh. Actually, I have this picture in the book. It's called, the name of the poem is called The Lost Soul of Manassas.
No, please go ahead and tell us.
Okay, I read it for you because you're gonna picture me standing in front of these gates. And, I know that they open it up in the morning and I walk through it. And when I walked through it and I saw all the unknowns, again, several stones of the states, and reading about it on the website, how many were unknown. This is called The Lost Soul of Manassas. Can you help me? I cried out loud. Can you hear me? I avowed. I am here somewhere on this field, you see, buried in pieces, yet not all of me. 'Twas in July of 1861, a time when the cannons of war had begun. I left my wife in Centerville, is where. Her name is Sally Mae. She was so fair. In my memory, I do see her golden mane and lips colored like cherry stain. I came here to Manassas during that hot July fight to defend my home from the northern strife. We all rallied and gathered with cheers of delight. We would whip the Yankees in this one fight. And so we did right here where I remain, the Confederacy victorious, yet so many lost in vain. It would take many more battles with death and loss, yet the Yankees would defeat us. It was our cross. You see, I am still here. I have not yet left to join my comrades with heaven's breath. For they could not find all of me and buried me where they could. Here I remain. Please help me if you would. With no marker for my grave, it's as if I did not live. I have no name, no face, so I'm forced to relive the battle of that July day so long ago. Can you help me? I cried out loud. I want to go. Until that time, I will wander these fields and flit about until it yields my name, my face, my burial place. Only then will I see God's grace. Can you help me? I cried aloud. Can you hear me? I avowed. Thank you.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that stop now is going to be even more powerful than it would have been before. I can't appreciate you enough for reading that.
Oh, thank you.
And Liz touched on what you were talking about tremendously. And Liz, thank you so much for bringing this up to us here today. She says that that's the original meaning of the word nostalgia. It was a medical condition describing a
yes,
broken
thank
heart
you.
or longing.
Thank you.
Again, it's something that goes so untalked about or just not delved into.
Yep.
And maybe that's because someone holds so much to the Confederacy or holds so much to the Union that we forget human emotion and feeling that this war has brought on. And maybe this is the place to reflect on that. This is something, when Anthony mentioned that there are 500 or so.
500. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
That's ridiculous. I come from, so I live in Fredericksburg, where I go up to a hill where there are so many unknowns, Lisa. You have no idea. It's the largest unknown national cemetery in the
I've been to
United States.
Fredericksburg many times, so I already know.
Right. Yeah. And every time I walk through that cemetery, and I don't care how many years it has been, how much I may know about this place, but when I walk through that cemetery and I see a stone with a plot number and then a separate number underneath that tells me how many bodies, or I hate to be this blunt, but parts of them are underneath, we're looking at numbers like 9, 8, 5, 9, 10, and in a row of 100.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to do that mental math at home, and you just picture in your mind how many pieces of a human life or what is underneath of that stone.
That's right.
And in this cemetery here, what I'm looking at, there are what, Anthony? 2 marked graves there?
2 known, right,
Yes.
Anthony?
2 known. 2 known.
Yeah. And the rest are all unknown. There's a beautiful obelisk. You see the obelisk?
I do see that, and that is wonderful. But that still, to me, it doesn't take away from the fact that there are so many empty chairs at home somewhere, sitting underneath of this beautiful piece of ground here.
And that there's a saying on that obelisk. If only I could just find it. So I think I put it in the book. Just give me one moment, guys. If I can find it.
Take your time.
I want to add something.
No, please.
Please.
Many people don't understand that the Park Service is not just dealt with educating these sites. The reason why that they conserve these sites is because that's their burial place. That's their burial place. Manassas has had that multiple times. There's other parks, like all across the country, that deal with this exact problem. And we're there to preserve unimpaired, the agency is, preserve unimpaired for the enjoyment of generations. And that's why I, believe in that mission. Not saying anything about the agency, but that's why those battlefield parks are there. That's why, let's say, Flight 93 is there too, the national memorials. Arlington cemeteries continue. I consider those two, all of these linked, because they're just as important as each other.
That's right.
And I almost just cried because, again, I'll talk about it later, but there's connections to what you just said today.
Absolutely.
The obelisk that you see behind the D in Confederate, there is a saying on it. It was dedicated in 1904 by the Bull Run and Groveton Ladies Memorial Association, established in 1867. This is for the 1st and 2nd Confederate dead, obviously of Manassas. And the south face, and I'm really gonna butcher my Latin. So if anybody's out there who studied Latin, I did.
Not me. Good. You're an
gonna,
expert in my book. Go ahead.
I'm gonna give it a try. South face. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, erected to the Confederate dead. We care not whence they came, dear in their lifeless clay. Whether unknown or known to fame, their cause and country still the same. They died and wore the gray. North face. They gave their lives in defense of their country on the fields of first and second battles of Manassas. East face. They sleep well in their unknown graves on the faraway battlefield. West face. But for them, the counting of time is not, for they dwell in the land of the Lord. Wow.
Wow.
That's what's on the obelisk.
That packs a punch.
Yep.
Yes, it does. That absolutely packs a punch. And what else packs a punch? Lisa, talk about this for a minute. I see this every day. We all see this huge, muscular Buffalo Jackson. What's up with this?
I think this sculptor had,
some creative liberty, to say the least.
Creative liberty to really make him look like a large gentleman. But I think that, but hey, that, it, and again, we have to understand in a way, when people look at that and say, man, maybe he looks like he's on steroids, we might say something like that,
Oh, we will. No, we'll say something like that because he does look like he's roid raging right now.
Okay,
yeah. Look at his horse. Look at little sorrel. That is not a little sorrel. That's a buff sorrel. Right
but the
big old sorrel.
I think you have to understand, again, I take all this creative liberty to bring you these stories and feelings, right? Mm-hmm. But keeping the history correct. The history always has to be correct. Absolutely. Otherwise, it's fiction. You never deviate from the exact channel of history, right? Okay. So, but when I look at this, and the gentleman who sculpted it, and I think I know, and now I can't remember his name, of course. He was using his creative processes, I think, when he did this, because sculpting is art, poetry is art, right? These are creative impulses. These are creative venues. So I just thought I'd mention that is probably why he's embellished the way he is his.
Yeah. And we got the cape too. I know I don't always want to bring up the cape because that's me ignoring the buff Wall Jackson of this picture.
Yeah, I don't remember him with a cape ever either.
No, but yeah, I don't either. I didn't like all the sites because I have been at the death site before and have talked to folks at the death site. I've worked at the Chancellorsville battlefield before, and now Manassas. Yeah. So I have followed this guy around quite a bit, and to see him like this, the first time I saw him like this, I had a very, commonly used expletive out of my mouth, like, "What the is this?" But Lisa, you're right. Creative liberty. Somebody saw Stonewall, whether it's a compliment or a slight.
Yeah.
Swole I like what Walt said, swole wall. We'll call him swole wall because we're looking at this picture. Yeah, he's a little swollen in this picture, as his little swole or swirl.
Swirl.
Oh, look at what Walt wrote. Later, the Dulce et decorum est quote was used by Wilfred Owen. He called it a lie. Oh, wow. It's beautiful and glorious to die for one's country. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Wow. Swole and little swoller. Or swole.
This was inevitable to come up if you're talking about Stonewall Jackson at Henry Hill. That's a lost cause monument.
It is. And
it's the imagery of the lost cause. He's a big, giant guy in a noble cause.
Yeah.
Which I'm not in agreement with, but
I think Superman had a lot to do with that too.
Yeah, he does look like Superman. Yeah. Looks like Clark Kent.
Well, you got to look at, and that's the thing I tell a lot of folks about monuments. I'm like, you have to look at when it was erected, why
where,
it was built,
and why.
Where and why exactly. And that was the thing, pre-World War II, right on the verge of it. Who's the biggest superhero out there at the time? I have the same guy they're portraying here in the monument, obviously, Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Douglas Southwell Freeman is present for this. Anthony, am I right?
Yes.
Probably. Yeah.
There was an allusion to Superman there was an allusion to World War II in the making of this monument. So, Josh, is lost cause as it is.
Yeah.
Look at where our history was at the time when that was built. So there's a story behind
Well,
it. I'm not praising it.
Oh,
I'm not giving it any
yeah.
praise.
Right.
But I'm saying there's such a story to this particular monument of Jackson. Because the one at
Well-
Chancellorsville, where he was bodied by the 18th North Carolina, is nowhere near as
But
in your
that
face
ties
as this
into
one is.
to all of the later 20th century monuments. Why are they put in and where? Normally, you're going to see
Right.
something in reaction to a civil rights movement.
Yeah, and then
That's
the thing
usually
is, too,
what's going to happen.
the Jackson monument at Chancellorsville was in the 1880s compared to this one.
Including Arlington House, the Robert E. Lee Memorial. That was
Right.
not answered until the 1960s.
Mhm.
It was called Arlington House, the Custis Lee Mansion, because the Grand Army of the Republic said, you will not put a memorial to Lee amongst our fallen comrades.
Right.
And then after they all had passed away, they changed the law. So the GAR went out of popularity, and then you see that into the 50s, into the 60s. And it changes right around there for 40s, 50s, 60s, somewhere in there. I forget when it was changed. But it's interesting to see that. That's the same mentality around most of these memorials. When were they put up? Why? And what is it a response to?
I mean, this and this thing is huge, as you know. I mean,
Yes,
you know,
it is.
It's massive.
Gigantic. I mean, I can stand there and I'm probably like a foot underneath where it says, "There stands Jackson like a stone wall."
Right.
It's probably a foot between my head and those words. That's
It's supposed to be elevated. I mean,
Yeah,
and
well,
that's the thing. It's in your face. It's there. You see it. You know, you have
very
to,
imposing.
it's hard to miss.
And you
What
know,
else
Even
is
in the
hard to
lease.
miss?
Yeah.
It's even in the lease agreement of giving it over to the Park Service. It's in the lease.
Wow.
That was a part of the agreement.
Well, now you're getting to my real estate background. Now you really got me curious.
Yeah.
I never
That,
thought
and
about
Lisa,
real estate. I
Lisa,
never
have
thought
you
real
read
estate.
Battling for Manassas by chance? Do you have a copy of that?
What's the name of it?
Battling for Manassas.
No, I haven't.
It's online. It's online for
online?
free.
Yeah, all right, cool. I was gonna say I can make a copy for you happen, but like
All
if
right,
you want
can
to
you
read it
just-
on mine,
Yeah, I'd love it.
it's worth reading because it's the history of it's basically the admin history of Manassas, but in a book
Not the
form.
whole history.
Not the whole,
Not
but
the whole.
enough to get what we were just talking about here
Okay, good.
by reading that. And I highly recommend to everyone, and I hate that I don't see it move as much as it should. But Battling for Manassas is a story absolutely worth being told. And Joan Zenzen did a bang-up job at trying to convey that story to the public, and I appreciate that she did that. But yeah, that it needs to be told more. So, Lisa, again, if you have access to it, we'll try to get you a link at the end of this.
Oh, that would be that'd be great. Yeah, when we wrap up, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liz also says we loved having you. And Liz also mentioned too that she liked Dawes, which absolutely Dawes is the best.
I love Dawes, yeah.
But she liked having you here. And having you in Manassas brings us up to one of the coolest.
Hey,
parts
hold
of
on,
the show.
hold on. I like Dawes
Anthony
too.
has something.
He
Hey,
brought
look
the
at
news.
us.
He brought the news about the Redcoats.
Yes, he did.
Just like
Oh, okay, hold on. You just took a shot at Darren there, and Darren's not here to defend himself.
and I also like.
I was
Armistead.
very happy standing in
Hold on.
Faneuil Hall, by the way.
Hold on.
So Darren's listening.
Here we go.
I like
Liz,
I
save
like-
me from this. Liz, save me.
I like Armistead too.
Oh, that's
Oh, I
right.
love it. Yeah.
Oh,
He
and
rose-
actually-
can
He
you
rose the
see
flag over McKinley.
by the
By the dawn's early lights.
That's right.
Okay. Right.
God, we could go off.
Who mentioned Armistead? Who was that? Was
That was Anthony.
Okay,
Me.
Anthony.
Tony DeRusso.
What happened with Armistead was a year ago last May, I was in Gettysburg and I did a tour with the Gettysburg Foundation for the Spangler Farm.
Yeah.
And they showed, we went over to the stone, the stone kitchen. Is that what they call it? The stone, yeah,
The summer kitchen or the
summer kitchen. Thank you. I'm getting, too much with stone here. STONE. And as I was there, and I went into the kitchen, and they were showing me where General Armistead died. It was so overwhelming that I wrote a poem about Armistead on the day of Pickett's charge, and what it was like to be in the summer kitchen and actually die 2 days later after the battle. And at the 160th of Gettysburg this past summer, I was invited with a group, but I was invited to stand in front of the summer kitchen and read the poem.
That was great. That was great.
Oh, you were there. Were you there?
Yes.
That's right. You were there. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I'm so sorry. Oh, that's right. You were there. I remember that. So hot. You know how hot it was? Oh my God.
That was a long day.
It was a long day. Yeah. Because then you came to my presentation too. Anthony is just, okay. So what I wanted to just, talk about also is what I consider my signature poem for Manassas. And I know we're talking a lot about Manassas. We haven't really got too much into Gettysburg and the Moore part. There's just so much.
There are plenty of other people that cover Gettysburg. I am happy about Manassas right now. You can tell me on about Manassas, please.
It doesn't get that as much. And
exactly.
that's where I found my heart. And that's where I left my heart, and that's why
what I like to hear. Like, Gettysburg is cool. It's still Disney World. We still have the Disney World thing. Everybody's got Gettysburg, but nobody has Manassas. Manassas. There are so many other battles than Gettysburg, and that's what a lot of people fail to realize. Like, we have this one big battlefield. We can talk all about this one big battlefield, but let's talk about all the other ones that actually mean. I hate to say more than Gettysburg. Yeah, Gettysburg is 3 days of the war that don't do much to end the war. Like, as much
insert Ken Burns quote here.
Right. Like, Gettysburg.
The Civil War was fought in 10,000 places.
Yeah.
That's right. And Gettysburg was just one of them.
One of them.
Just one.
There are a lot more places, and Manassas honestly has more implications to the Civil War than Gettysburg does. Gettysburg's 3 days. They're still fighting afterwards.
But Manassas is 2 battles.
Exactly.
Two different times. Not all in one time. There was July 21st, 1861, and I think it was August 28th to the 30th, 1860. The second Manassas.
That's right.
Yes, thank God. I got that right. Woo, you want to get that wrong. And so it's 2 separate times, and I just find it fascinating. And 2 times the Confederacy beat them. And I found that was, the Union couldn't figure it out from the first time. They still and we know from the Eastern Theater, as we know, they were continually beaten. The Union until actually Gettysburg. So the Western Theater was kind of a different story, but we know in the Eastern Theater, Lincoln couldn't find that general to make the difference. So. But it wasn't until Gettysburg that the tide turned. And it was the first battlefield I saw, and I love it. And when I put this together for the Gettysburg and the Manassas, again, I didn't get to fulfill my residency for Gettysburg, but it didn't stop me from going and, feeling all of the, motion from there. But having lived in Manassas, and that's why I put them both there, because they were part of my residencies, and the and more are different people, places, and situations in the Civil War. But when I put this together, I knew Manassas had to be on it because you don't really see a lot. And because I love it so much, I just obviously and was so enamored and thrilled and humbled and blessed to be there and live there. I mean, I know that, a lot of the people that are on, it's like, to think about living on a battlefield, it's almost like you salivate. You're like, oh, when can I go? When really can I go? And you're jumping. It's like you're sitting in your chair and you're jumping out because you can't wait to get there. And it's not that you're visiting there, you're living there. So you're becoming a part. God bless you. You're becoming a part of that battlefield. You are becoming, because you're taking these unknown voices and you're giving them life. Like this poor soldier who can't find his way the lost soul of Manassas. He's flitting around the spirit because he can't find, he's in pieces and bits, and he can't find his way home. He can't go to God. So
Fair enough.
and
Well,
Liz, that's a beautiful statement. Power of
Yes,
place
it
is a
is.
large part of the artist in residence program ethos. Not only can the artist connect with the resource, but the public can connect with the works. That's Liz. You're absolutely right, and it is a great program. I highly recommend. And I guess I'm going to have to apply again. I don't know.
I guess you're gonna have to, huh?
Can you guys stand having me again? Anybody who knows about
I don't know, man. I have
Yes.
to have Lisa come
Yes.
down to the battlefield again. Oh no.
Yes.
Oh man. Maybe she can sign some books for us too. Oh man.
Oh, well.
Oh.
Ooh, that leads us into a really cool conversation because the picture I have here is something I'm also holding in my hand right now. Potentially, it is. It's called the Nameless and the Faceless of the Civil War, Gettysburg, Manassas, and more.
And
All right, I had to make sure I emphasize the cool battlefield there.
You guys are something else. And, there is yes, perhaps I can come down and we can do something. We'll see, whatever the powers that be decide.
Yeah, perhaps. I wonder if this book is going to be for sale at Manassas.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Manassas.
I know. Manassas.
Manassas.
There's a G word in there somewhere, but Manassas is in there.
Gettysburg. Manassas.
Yeah.
Gettysburg. Who said Gettysburg?
Who said that? Disney World.
Yeah, it must have been Anthony.
Like, yeah.
It is the Disney World of Civil War Park.
It is, absolutely. It's a one-trick pony. But we're at Manassas. We're talking about the cool battlefield. So, Lisa, you have authored one of the coolest things I've seen in a very long time. And that is what we're looking at right here. And this is what brings us to our final conversation of tonight is this book here. So, you and I have talked quite a bit, right, even before this book has come out. Like, I remember being able to connect with you and just learn about what you were doing. And I found it absolutely fascinating and something that I think many of us need in this history field. Because, again, I talk about it all the time about reading these names, reading these battles, and understanding these. And sometimes when that happens, it gets all lost in translation. But we find ourselves, I don't want to say the word desensitized because I actually hate that word when it comes to this study field that we're in.
It's true.
It is. We read
very
so
true.
much that sometimes we forget about the empty chair logic. You know what I mean?
Right, very good.
And that's what we're starting to let slip as you study this so much. So you put in a powerhouse that knocks us out when it comes to that, because this reminds us exactly what we're dealing with here, and that's the human interest aspect of this war.
And so many unknown. I mean, I actually was in Mount Juliet, Tennessee for 2 weeks ago to visit my husband. I visited my best friend, and she has a small farm in Mount Juliet. And she turns to me and she's like, "Do you want to go to Franklin?" I'm like, "Okay."
Absolutely.
Because we didn't rent a car. She just picked us up at the airport, and we just kind of hung out. Rode her new horse and all that, had a blast. And I'm like, and so we went to the Battle of Franklin, run by I believe it's the Franklin Trust. Oh,
it is. My God. Got a good buddy down there. Joseph Ricci actually works down there. Good friend of mine.
Wow.
Yep.
It was unbelievable because I kept asking when we got to the visitor center. Of course, they have another, Confederate cemetery and rows and rows and rows of unknown. And so when I got to the visitor center after we went through Carlton Plantation, that house there, and so we're in the visitor center, and I asked the gentleman at the desk, I believe it was I'll say park ranger, but it didn't say NPS because it's the trust. So I said, "Where was Patrick Claiborne killed? Where was he killed? I must have asked this poor guy 100 times, and he just kind of pointed, it's over here, over there." I said, "Well, I can't see it from here. Where is it?" And I kept. He goes, "Do you mind my asking why you?" And I was like, "Well, I have this book out, The Nameless and Faceless of the Civil War, Gettysburg, Manassas, and more. And I have a poem about Patrick Claiborne and his fiancée, Susan Tarleton. And there's a poem in Susan's voice about what it was like to love Patrick Claiborne in the days when he was going to the Battle of Franklin. and what it was like to hear that he died. And eventually, of course, she died shortly thereafter. And I'm going on and on. I'm telling the story, and he goes, "What? What did you do? What did you write?" And he slips his card. He goes, "Send me your info." He goes, "What are you really? What?" And he goes, "Oh my God." So, of course, when I got up to go on the tour to the area where he died, I said, "Okay, point it out." And there's a marker. Of course, that was a disaster for the Confederacy, as we all know. That was just a complete disaster. So,
Yeah.
and he was shot and killed instantaneously. He died immediately. So, and then they showed the area on the porch of the Carlton House where the 6 generals were laid out. Confederate generals that died that day. So, but what I would like to do is read what I call my signature poem for Manassas.
Please, yes, this is the best. This is the best way to close this out tonight, is to read this one.
As part of my, I'll say, contract with the Artist in Resident program with the National Park Service, I had to produce an original piece of work and donate it to the park. And so I believe it was supposed to be like 6 months. But when I was invited within 6 months' time, so I was there October and early November, that would have meant I needed to do it in the spring. And so I spoke to Liz and I said, well, as long as I'm coming down in August, can I just hand deliver it? Because it was huge. As you saw, Tyler, you saw it. It's a huge piece of, big 18 by 24 poster with the photograph on it. And she's like, yeah. So when I presented at the 160th of Second Manassas, I presented this to the Park Service and to Liz. And Tyler, you have it hanging up right outside the bookstore. We are going to look to get it in the bookshop for sale.
Absolutely. Along with this book too.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I'm very excited about that. What I would like to do is, this is my signature poem of Manassas. This was the culmination, I believe, of my experience living there for almost a month. I spent a lot of time at the Bull Run Creek. And on this particular fall day, it was absolutely magnificent. And some of the leaves were turning. You don't get the brilliance of fall that you get up here in the Northeast. But it was a different type of look. It wasn't as deep as it is here. And I'm walking on the trail, and it was completely silent. So I'm going to set this up for you. It was completely silent. You didn't even hear the water running. And the water now is on my left. Okay, so you guys know I'm going in the other direction. So it's on my left. And so I'm just stopped on the trail. And when I stopped, the sunlight was coming through on the opposite side. So it was on my right. And you could see the sun coming in through some of the trees, and they were bouncing off the leaves. And I stood there, and a leaf fell off a tree and fell at my feet. And I bent down to pick it up. And when I bent down, I kind of used this almost like this swooping motion when I picked it up. And in that moment, I just thought of all the unknowns of that battle, first, second, all of them. And as I was standing there and thinking of them and wondering, who are they? What happened to them? They didn't get a chance to live. Just going on and on in my mind. And all I could think of was what came to my mind as I used my hand motions up to pick up that leaf and swooped my hands above my head and looked up at the sky. And this is what came to my heart. And I ran back. Of course, I was pretty far from my residence at that point. I ran back to the house, and this is what I wrote. Rise up, all ye of Manassas, rise. Rise up, all ye of Manassas, rise, and take your place among the skies. For in these fields among those unknowns, there are stories I know that are yet untold, whispers of valor and elan that you did make, stories of friendships you did not forsake. Rise up, all ye Manassas, rise, and take your place along God's side. These lush fields colored in magnificent green were once killing fields of the obscene, a battlefield where the country divided and fought, and now where unity shall forever be taught. Rise up, all ye Manassas, rise. I have heard your silent cries, whispers of those left behind without a name or face. So many I know here in this place, names like the deep cut, unfinished railroad to witness here and there. The stone house, Henry Hill, filled with such despair. With each step across these hallowed grounds, be mindful a soldier may have found a final place, resting place, too young to die, yet so many did, is how I cry. Rise up, all ye Manassas, rise. Your presence here is so defined. Just walk the stone bridge along the riverbed, the one called Bull Run that long ago bled. Stop and listen to the forest sounds, and for a moment become one with them, for all their sacrifice with so many men. Rise up, all ye Manassas, rise. Take thy brethren by your side, and hand in hand for those who ascend to the Almighty's throne, let us never forget those lost and unknown.
God, that is beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. That it still to this day gives me
God.
goosebumps to think
Woo.
about that.
Wow. I get, when I recite that poem, it takes me back to that exact
That moment.
spot and the chills I felt thinking of all of them. And so, yeah, it's
Wow.
been, it was an honor to be chosen to go. And I cannot urge enough people who may be listening to try and to apply, because it gives people like us that opportunity, because we are, as a poet, we're an artist, and we're not a physical artist. We don't paint, we don't sculpt. And that is the picture that I took that day along the Bull Run Creek. Now, if we walk down that path, the Bull Run Creek is going to be on your left, and you can see the sun coming in. You see how it's coming in from that side, hitting. And I was walking through that path. And to me, the highlight of walking down that path as I was looking at it, and I took that photograph, it was almost like going to God, to ascend to God, that like you're going through a portal to go to a different place. It was so emotional for me. It still is. It just completely resonates with me. So,
And this picture is, and the story you're telling now is a perfect way to close this out tonight. I think this is perfect. Like looking at this and then hearing what your stories, your experiences at Manassas. This is something that all of you listening at home, whether you're listening right now with us and talking with us, or whether you're listening later on Spotify, Lisa is bringing you guys the real human experience of being on one of these battlefields. We all have it different. Some of us are there for the nitty gritty shirt movement here, shirt movement there. Some of us are here for the stories of the civilians. Some of us are here for all of it. Enslaved, civilians, stories of the battle. But Lisa's bringing everything under the sun to life again that hasn't been brought to life in forever. And Lisa, for that, I thank you so much for being able to bring those stories to life and to allow your personal life into this field of history that all of us here watching at home, listening and talking today to you, value so much. We have a couple comments here to close this out tonight. Liz says it's beautiful. Eric said hello, friends. Liz also says swole wall a few minutes ago. We gotta not forget that part.
Boy, that was some conversation. That was
Isn't that something? I know.
That was a lot of fun. And I'm looking at it from the creative perspective, and you guys are like, well, it's but it's all right.
But it is all creative. No, you're right. And even though we're making the jokes and saying, we're still looking at the creativity of that whole thing and making jokes off of somebody else's creativity. Not that we're making fun of what they did.
Nope.
But just that we are evoked by that. We are getting a response from somebody else's creativity.
So
and
my
that's
work,
what's supposed to happen. I think
my art is emotional.
It is, and that's what I love about it.
Words. It's very different. I don't believe, and that's not why I did it. I mean, again, it all started with Michael Dougherty. I mean, this wasn't anything I set out to do. It just came to me, the desire to share these people who had no name and no face, to give them a voice, to give them their chance, just to share what happened to them. And how do we know? Well, because we actually really don't know, because they're unknown. So
Right.
this is why it works. And then we just, put it with the history to tell the correct story of what was going on. And I say that a lot because being the creative part with with the literature part, once I cross that line and I start writing the essay, those I's are dotted, those T's are crossed, the references, the citations, they're spot on, because the minute that you deviate from that, then it's just fiction, and we don't want that. We want to keep the history. It's very, very important, obviously. So
Indeed it is.
thank
So
you.
we have reached the part of our show where we close out.
Okay.
And I found a picture that I really think we should close out with.
That
All right, I had a
will
laugh.
never not be great.
Oh man,
Would you like a? I got one.
I know
Everyone
you do.
has
I was
a
about to
good
say
day.
we have to turn to our favorite Tony DeTrusso here. He's going to give us a great ending. Anthony, are you ready, sir? Lisa, I don't know.
Yes.
Before I let Anthony start his shenanigans, and that's putting it lightly,
Yes.
because I can use so many more colorful words for this that Anthony gives us every single day.
This is a Christmas Cracker Jack joke.
That's what our British friend Darren will call him, our Christmas cracker joker.
It's like a Christmas cracker jokes.
He knows all these really bad jokes that are going to really make you just not like jokes anymore because they're. Anthony, go ahead. I don't even need it.
Share Liz's comment.
Did she say something good? There we go. Oh my god. Tony DeRusso. Okay, for folks at home, just a really quick thing. A visitor from
To
a
a place.
while ago to a place called him Tony DeRusso.
Yeah.
That is his name in my phone.
That's not my real name.
That is not his real name by the slightest, but that is his name in my phone, and I will always know him as Tony DeRusso because of that. Not Anthony Trusso, but Tony DeRusso. And before we go on to his Christmas cracker jokes, Lisa, I seriously want to thank you so much for coming on tonight.
This was
and
amazing.
Yes, really was. This is something that we haven't been able to delve into yet. And to find someone who is so emotionally in tune with the Civil War and has these stories and has the ability to just give us some beautiful poetry like that is awesome. So if you want her book, there's a couple places you can go.
Where can you go?
That. Let's talk about where you can go. One of the places you can go, if you want to go in person, the Manassas National Battlefield Bookstore will have Lisa Samia's book on this. Not yet. September 12th. Check back in after September 12th. Only a couple days away. Check back in.
Next week. Thank you.
That is next week. How did you know? Wow.
Because my birthday is the next day.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, what'd I do?
Hey guys, should we sing an early happy birthday to
no, I
Lisa
didn't mean
Samia? Oh, no. You don't get out of this that easy. Yeah, no.
Bad.
Yeah, let me turn off this music for a minute because we're going to have to do some really horrible happy birthday singing.
Happy
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lisa. Josh is the delay. Happy birthday to you. Thanks for singing, Anthony.
And many more.
I hope so. God willing. I've now been serenaded by three of the best. Thank
There
you.
you go. Oh no, that's you.
Well, I'm a terrible singer, so
I am too. Anthony didn't even
I'm pretty
sing.
sure the singer in the group here gave the
No, you
half-ass
didn't.
attempt
Laugh
too.
the entire time.
Mr. Historian over here.
I was
Anthony?
singing, but then
No,
Josh
you're
was
the
well
actual
behind.
singer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, happy
And maybe
birthday.
just be heavy
I'm
metal
liking
music,
you.
though.
No, I can't. Yeah,
You know-
that's
you know-
Shh, don't tell anybody.
I thought the dryer was shrinking my clothes, but turns out it was the refrigerator all along.
Oh.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, you're kind of just getting bigger.
Yeah,
I
I'm
got
trying to
two.
defeat
I got
that,
two.
Jeff.
Wait a second. Hold on.
Lisa, are you ready for the horrible way we close out these podcasts?
Yeah, and am I going to stay on for a little bit?
Yes, stay on for because we're gonna do a debrief. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, real quick.
Debrief. Yeah, go ahead.
What's the basic unit of So I got new measurements. just came
Laryngitis.
out. What's one basic unit of laryngitis called?
I knew it. What?
1 horsepower.
Oh.
That was
That's
bad.
true. Yeah, that was
You know,
good.
I'm just you.
Thank you,
know
for
what?
being nice to him
Wait,
because
whoa,
I was going to
whoa,
say
whoa.
something
Give me
different.
2 more. Yeah, 2 more.
Oh,
What is
Jesus Christ.
1 kilogram of falling figs? What does that equal?
Oh, figure
What,
gram.
Anthony?
That equals 1 fig Newton.
Yeah, 1 fig Newton.
I hear those crickets again. They're starting to ring really
Um,
loudly. Burnside found it funny though.
What is 1 million aches equal?
What is what?
1 million aches and pains equals 1 megahertz.
Having to look at this face and think it's funny.
One was good.
Time between
1
slipping on a
megahertz.
peel. What is the time between slipping on a peel and smacking the pavement?
What?
One banana second.
Okay. You know who found that funny? Benjamin Butler found that funny.
I did.
Well, it's
Look at him. Look at Ben Butler.
Oh, spoons.
Oh, there's Patrick Claiborne.
He's a happy Patrick Claiborne.
Well,
here.
I got all right, one more.
Okay. Let's
What
see.
did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet?
Not what Braxton Brax says.
Supplies.
Okay, and that one
I don't know.
absolutely
We're ending on
deserves
that one.
a hooker
Whoa.
laugh.
Wait.
Oh.
I only know 25 letters of the alphabet. I don't know why.
Okay,
right, we
and
can end
now
on
we
that
have
one.
canceled our show for the rest.
We can now
Wait,
end
one
on
more.
that.
One more.
No,
one
he's
more.
got one more. Oh God, I'm so sorry, folks.
How does the moon cut his hair?
How?
Eclipse it.
That's
End
what
on that
Sheridan
one,
says.
please.
Yep. That's it. Sheridan has
That's it,
said
we're
bye-bye. What? Hold on. My father is listening. Sorry, it's giving him. Anthony, stop giving people ideas. You're not supposed to do that, man.
Wait.
Liz, that's a good one, Liz.
So my sister has a dog, right?
Uh-huh.
And she the other day she asked the dog, "What's 2 minus 2?" And you know what he said?
What did he
Nothing.
say?
Nothing, because he can't talk. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yep. And then, by the way, just a reminder: this is Anthony here.
Oh God.
This is the man that is
Have
telling
a
you
good day, everyone.
this crap. But in all seriousness, Lisa, thank
Yes.
you so much for coming on tonight.
That
What you
photograph,
have
real quick.
provided.
That photograph
Hold on,
was
Anthony's going to
taken.
interrupt me.
That
Swole
photograph was
Tony,
taken.
true accent.
That photograph was taken during Lisa's tenure at Manassas.
Was this?
That was in
Oh,
2017.
But not this one.
What?
I went back in time and saved the Republic.
Do you ever think I'm going to get rid of these from my picture library here in Restream? No, sir.
Yeah, they're good. But
That
Lisa,
is Aaron
these
on the
are-
ship with the people throwing the tea overboard.
I got rid
Lisa.
of that one for this
Yeah.
one.
Thank you, Liz.
Lisa,
all.
thank you.
And this one.
Uh,
Just a quick. You want to see a British person crying in front of the fact that Cornwallis surrendered before we close
Oh.
out. There you go. He's very upset, but we are very happy.
oh.
No offense, Darren. Nothing like that. But again, Lisa, thank you again so much
you.
for joining tonight.
Yeah, thank
You have
for
provided
calling.
us with such an awesome experience, and your books are great. I'm so happy that they are going to be for sale at the Manassas National Battlefield Bookstore.
Yes.
So if you find yourself in Manassas
Manassas National Battlefield Park.
Bookstore,
Manassas,
Please stop in.
not
and
Gettysburg.
subscribe.
please
Yeah.
do. Liz says thank you, Lisa. Liz, thank you, and thank you both,
Lisa.
Lisa, all of you guys for being here tonight. We are headed off because it is Saturday. All of us have to get out of here at this
I'm
point.
tired. Thank you, Lisa.
I'm Tyler. Thank you for.
Hello, tired. I'm
being
Jay.
here. Yeah, that's right. Tired's here apparently. We don't know who the fifth person is here. Anthony, Jay, Lisa, Tyler, and Tired are all here tonight. And now we are heading off. But thank you guys again so much. We will be back soon. We have a special announcement for September 30. If you're around, check the podcast, check the Facebook pages. We have a cool announcement coming up tomorrow.
And go to
This
Fort
will be a
McHenry
good
next.
one.
And
go to Fort McHenry next week. DeRusso might be there. We'll see you guys on the next one, on the field, or at Fort McHenry this weekend. See you then.